Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go, man. Hunt the ball. Let's go, family on 3. 1, 2, 3, family.
Hello, football family. Welcome into Huddle It Up Films NFL Draft Barbecue. That barbecue stands for Big Board Questions. Having a bunch of the flock, Ravens analysts come through, talk about this draft, and man, look who showed up early. Dev Panchwagh. Dev, how's it going, man? Early shift here, early show.
It's got to be early, you know. Just, I'm appreciative of you having me on and jumping the line and getting out in front with, I guess, the first discussion of this. I know it's going to be a great series. I don't want to ruin your plug for it, but anyway, appreciate it, man. Morning edition. I don't have my bagel or coffee yet, but I plan on getting it after because, you know, I usually get my stuff after. But, you know, we're in that morning flow with it. So
I got the wife making coffee upstairs, man. She'll bring us a couple cups down soon. You know, we got to start de-thawing stuff, man. Get some early stuff on the grill. What do you like to eat at barbecue, Steph? Any chicken dish known to man is in your bio, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, barbecue chicken is a must. That's a good. Hey, that's good, man. You good memory. Wow, I'm
Pay
impressed.
attention. Pay attention.
I like all those salads that aren't real salads, right? Like pasta salad, potato salad, macaroni salad. So anything those sides usually get me. Yeah, that's a good start. I mean, dogs and burgers, the whole thing. Barbecue season. My wife and I were just talking about that too. We're like, when this weather gets right, we can't wait. It's and now that things are opening up again, it's even better. But yeah, no, I'm kind of an equal opportunity barbecue guy. I don't complain as long as you're not barbecuing veggies too much or something like that, something weird. But you know,
yeah,
to each his own.
More of a traditionalist myself over here, man. You know, me a burger, a hot dog, and a beer, and I'm good to go, man. You know, some good friends, but yeah, man. I tell you, this draft is kind of a barbecue in itself because it's almost like two drafts in one. And I know that we were talking before, man, before we came on. You had your eye on the edge rushers in this draft. I mean, it's a pretty good group of edge rushers.
I love this class. Yeah, I know. You know, there's been some sentiments out there that this is something that everybody talks about every year, and you've been around it for a while. It's not true that people talk about it like this every year. Last year's class was pretty good, but it was a lot of questions, I think, with that group, right? You had every one of those guys. Pay, you know, when you look at I think Pay was up there, right? And I'm drawing a blank on who was the top dog in that class.
Russo and away were real close.
Russo from Miami,
Jalen
right?
Phillips
Phillips was the top. Yeah, Phillips and then Russo later. But every guy, I just remember that class. It was like their talent wasn't the question, but they had major like question marks of some kind, whether it's, you know, health, off the field, lack of any sort of experience, right? This group, I think, is a little bit more well-rounded, in my opinion.
Me too. And overall in the draft, it's just like that last year was so frustrating, Dev, because so many players played half seasons. Some of them opted out. The tape was all uneven. The combine wasn't there. You had to trust pro day numbers. It seemed like everybody was running 4.4s. I mean, the whole thing was a mess. It was a tough year for me to first release of my work after all these years was last year. This year, Dev, I feel like we're getting like a 2-for-1, like a lot of good players. I mean, not literal 2-for-1, but it's just really stacked, especially in that middle. Dev, if you take a look at my big board, maybe I'll put it up on the screen right now. In that area, all the way through that orangish color, those are second round grades. I have 72 position players there. That's not even counting quarterbacks. That's a really high number for me, Dev. Usually you don't get to the, you know, because 64 players will be picked in 2 rounds. Usually you don't get 64 players with a second round grade. And I have 72 sitting there just because it's so fat in the middle. But with the edge rushers, I wanted to ask you about the top 10. You see my section in dark green there. I have Thibodeau number 1, Walker number 2, Hutchinson number 3, Jermaine Johnson number 4. How do you feel about that list? And who sticks out to you among that group?
Oh, and it's interesting. I applaud you. You got Hutchinson at 5 because I know that he may end up being consensus #1 overall pick when it's all said and done. But I have heard, and I listened to Dan Brugler and Lance Zerline, that podcast, and they have a similar sentiment on him. Not 100% sure if he's going to be that guy all the way. I think he'll be. They all. I mean, again, going by what they've said, at least, is that he'll be a good pro. He'll be reliable. He'll play hard. He'll train. He'll do all those intangibles. But whether he has that ceiling, but that's interesting that you have him 5th. I'd be curious what your take is, but I'll kind of say my piece up front. And I think Thibodeau is so intriguing. I'm with you, man. I have him. I don't have a board, but if I was to say top 5 overall player in this draft, I'm with that. It's really he's the quintessential speed rusher, pure pass rusher, and his physical, like the things you look for in a pass rusher, we are identifying. It's like bend and dip, and the ability to get around the corner, the takeoff, right? Timing. I saw a clip of him.
Timing's ridiculous.
Snap. I mean, it's an art form. And it reminded me of Suggs a little bit. Like when he came out, the big thing that I remember, hey, he didn't do well in his 40, right? That was the big controversy at that time, and that was like, ooh, he didn't run a good 40 time, but his 10-yard dash was incredible, and his get off was the best get off that I can remember seeing or knowing of. So that's where I'm at with KT. And I've said, and I don't know if you've followed anything I've said on Twitter about him, but I've been very.
I try, Dev. I try.
No, it's okay. No, I meant more like I don't want to kind of what do you call it? I don't want to like be a broken record on this, but maybe I need to say it again. But I think
that's right. You got to say it for everybody.
Thibodeau is the new age football player. I was literally, Jason, watching a CBS Sports clip on him because I think they had a mock to the Ravens at 14, and Danny Cannell, who's like this dinosaur guy, I don't know, former quarterback analyst. If you ever watch him, does not have a clue about the game as we were talking about it today. And yeah, I'm taking a shot at him. Talked about how Thibodeau is focused on the wrong things and how I don't think he's doing a good job of preparing for this draft. And if he slips, that's why. And get out of here with that stuff, man. This is the new age player, the player that says, I want to be a complete human being. I have interest in business. If you're going to say that about him, say that about LeBron James, say that about the athletes out there who are mindful of their business ventures. You're never going to hear Brady say these things, but he's got plenty of business ventures himself. So I guess that's the personal side, right? For me, if you, and he had this idea that like that personal side is what's weighing him down, and I'd go the other way. I think he's got the personal and he's got on-field like incredible ability. So I mean, the likelihood he's there for the Ravens, maybe they go up and get him. I think that's a possibility. I think that's a good possibility actually in terms of the guys they would target if they're in that range. But yeah, I just wanted to say my piece on him because I feel passionately that when all is said and done, I don't know if he's the best player. I don't think he's quite that level, but I think he's going to end up being like a top 5 player in this class.
Me too. The ability is what I mainly go on, and let's face it, Dev, especially from my generation, man, things have changed. It's a different world.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we both. I've imagined both of ours. We've been around for a little while, and this is. I mean, if you're going to knock Thibodeau for it, you could knock probably 200 other players in this draft. Or, at least the top 50 who think, hey, who know they're got a place in this league. I mean, they're thinking about their brand and everything else. Doesn't bother me one bit. I look at on the field, and what I like most about Thibodeau is his versatility. You see him stand up, you see him with his hand in the dirt, you see the quick get off. I mean, he's got everything that you need. And to me, as much as I like Walker, I love the blue chip pedigree of Kayvon Thibodeau. I can't stay away from it. I wanted to ask you too, going back to the top 10. Now, I listed this top 10 Dev, and I'm still messing with it. Like, it's not in stone, but that 10 is pretty solid as far as those are the 10 guys I want. I wanted to ask you about the need aspect of it, because basically I ranked those guys based on who I thought is going to be the best pro. Like, just strictly, I took tackle and outside linebacker, edge as an equal need. So
Right.
if it comes down to it, and you have your number one option at, or say a same option at either tackle or edge rusher, are you leaning edge rusher because of the need, or are you just going by the best player? Like, how do you weigh these tackles against these edges at the top?
Oh, it's a tough one. Gets to that old, it gets to that classic conversation of Ozzie Newsome's instilled in the franchise from the first draft that they ever had, and they took Jonathan Ogden because he was the best player on the board, and they didn't go for Lawrence Phillips because of need. And right. I'm thinking that that's how they should lean, but a guy like Thibodeau, to me, it's like maybe he's one slot or two slots difference if unless on their board they don't see it that way, right? And they see like there's a 4 or 5 spot gap. I guess that's how I would approach it. I lean towards the tackle if I did lean that way, like, because Neal, Cross, I mean, these guys are really, really good prospects, but I still think like Thibodeau could be the difference maker there for me. But I don't feel the same way about Walker. If that makes sense. Like, if it's Neal and Icky and Cross, I take those guys over Walker. I like that those guys, I know what I'm getting with those guys day one, and there's incredible upside. Whereas I think Walker, you said it just now, Thibodeau has the pedigree, like the proof points as an edge player. And we're going to get into, I think, the conversation as a whole to what you're alluding to, which is like, do you have to box yourself in to a need? I don't think so, within reason. But in this case, that's why I would probably not favor Walker, because I'm pressed to feel like you have to feel the need. I think I would still go with one of these tackles because they're going to be the better players in like 10 years or so, in my opinion, 10 to 12 years.
That's interesting, because I'm going to get people's opinion on that. It's really hard. You're splitting hairs. Like, I have Hamilton and Stingley where they are because I think that that's where they should be on the board. But when I start mixing up who's a better prospect, Thibodeau or Kwanwu, or Thibodeau and Neal, I mean, I'm splitting hairs, and I'm wondering if the Ravens' needs should come into play, like the immediate need on the defensive line that they have.
Totally.
Whereas, tackle might be more of a long-term investment.
Yeah. So. Well, if you're getting in the top, here's how I'll take a step back and kind of explain my thought process, is that if you're in the top 5 group, if that's the top 5, like you've ranked it, if one of those guys somehow falls to them at 14, then that's a different topic. Like, that's a different conversation that's happening in that draft room. I guarantee it. It's like, oh my God, Cross
is there.
Right. And all of a sudden, if you're staring at those guys versus Jordan Davis, you'd be doing, I think, a little bit of a disservice. And that's just my opinion. I know people don't agree, not you necessarily, but I know I've had conversations like this with other people that are like, no, you can't keep ignoring pass rush. At that point, I'll figure it out, right? I'll trade. I'll figure out pass rush if it's that big of a problem. I can't pass up on a player that's highly ranked for me. And if you have a strong conviction of it and you say that this player is going to end up being a Pro Bowl, because at the end of the day, Jason, like, they need to hit on impact. And I know day one impact or year one impact is tough to quantify, maybe if you take a player like that. But ultimately, I think it'll prove itself out. And 2-3 years from now, that's a no-brainer. But yeah, I've always favored the better player within reason, personally.
They're just all so close. So, let's assume that with these edge players, we go in a different direction in round 1, which is probably what's going to happen. We could take any other position, for goodness sake. So we don't get an edge rusher round 1. Like, what would be your plan for there? Is there anybody else on that board that you would target? What kind of area? What's your thought process there? Because Dev, you got to figure we're going to add at least one edge in this draft. So where do you get them if you can't get them in round one?
It's a great question, and your board is it's full of guys, and I look at I start with Mafe at 30, right? Very interesting. I mean, you're pretty high on him, and I'm high on him too. And I know our mutual friend, mutual friends out there. I'm not going to name names, but I think there's a group of people, including my partner in crime at times, James Ogden. I think he's pretty high on him. But I think the idea of Mafe at 30, he tested really well, which is a plus. Just like he has all of the makeup physically of an edge. So you start with him. I like him a lot, and I think being a pick 45, I think they're going to have their chance to get one of these guys. If I go down the rest of the board, as we keep Ojabu, obviously you kind of have to like. It's a little bit of like it's kind of like what's your risk tolerance or what's your risk palette on him? If you feel like, you're going to get him week 8. I mean, there's been the conversation, but he might be available week 8 and onward as, I guess, who was the guy from the Colts last year? And the name escapes me right now. But he tore his Achilles as well. And I think it was a 2-month difference. And I think Ojabu was 2 months late. So you could still get some snaps out of him, and it's a 17-game season. So the rationalization there could be he could be ready for you like at the back half. But the problem with Ojabu is he's not a refined pass rusher anyway.
No,
so
he's still. It was going to be a learning process this year anyway, which is why I have Mafe right ahead of him on the board.
I'm with you on that.
Mafe at 30 and Ojabu at 36. But, I mean, when we say these numbers out loud, it's like, oh, well, the Ravens don't pick till 45, 46. Well, no, you're going to have players available in that top 30. It happens every year. I don't care, Dev, what kind of board you make. Your players are going to be left there too, buddy. Like, it happens to all of us, man. Nobody nails it.
All the time.
So what do you think are the odds? What do you think would be the odds? I'll give you 3 guys. Mafe, Ebiketie, and Ojabo. What's the odds one of those guys are there at 45, 46, or do we have to trade up to get one of those guys probably? Like, or do you just wait to your next round? Because I know you like a couple of guys later on here too.
I wouldn't trade up. I mean, I've actually run through some scenarios, and that's exactly what you just kind of the scenario you just spit out, right? That I see playing out. I definitely see it. I mean, there could be a run. I'd have to take a look at the teams that are picking ahead of the Ravens, but you have to think as well. I mean, how many there's so many teams that are pretty well. There's a few teams that are well situated as well with their edge group, right? Like the Packers is one I can think of off the top of my head. Just they're in good shape. So, and they have other needs. Tampa's another team, right? The Chiefs are another team. They have other needs maybe, but I think that is like 99% that one of those 3 will be there at 45.
Really? Okay.
I think so. Like 99%. Mafe's definitely gotten some, I think he's gotten some good momentum here with his combine effort. I think he tested pretty well, but I'm not necessarily I'm not in love. It's not in love to the point where I would try to necessarily trade up to get one of these guys. I feel confident, to your point, that if they're not there, there are other players.
Somebody else really good, right?
Yeah. Like I like the group. Like we haven't talked about yet, but I guess I can jump in if you're good with that.
Sure. I was going to ask one more time. Seemed like you brought Mafe up though, specifically among that group. Aside from compared to Ebiketie or Ojabo, we know why he's injured, or any other, or Karloff. This is another one. What sticks out to you about Boye Mafe that you like? Because to me, what I like first is he's easy to get hands on. He doesn't have that great bend. He's kind of straight up at times, but you can't really do anything with him, Dev. Like, he goes where he wants to go. And of course, his Senior Bowl was outstanding, man. The player of the week, pretty much. So, what do you like about Mafe?
I always like the guys that perform well at the Senior Bowl. I mean,
Me
to me,
too.
that's a big indicator. I know that's also historically what the Ravens have looked at that, right? Like they've been very. I feel like they've been drawn to those players as well, and I think they had some of their staff there, but there's some good tools that I like from him, and in terms of his explosiveness, the physical tools jump out to me, and that's probably we talked about what Kayvon Thibodeau is, the get off and just that quick first step.
Yeah, the
And
short area burst with Mafe.
short area burst.
Yes.
So when we look at the Ravens right now with their roster, when you look at the group that they have at edge, I mean, Odafe Oweh, I feel like once he figures that part out, he's going to be like unstoppable, right? But right now, he does have a little bit of a slow. If you notice, there's a few snaps last year where he just didn't take off right away because maybe he was thinking about something else, and I believe he's just a little bit immature with that right now. But
Something I talked with Ken McCusick about is him saying, I believe it was Joe Ortiz last year saying he was taught to read and react.
yes,
And so basically in college, Dev, just for anybody listening, he wasn't asked to just look at the ball and go off the snap. He was basically reading the lineman first and then going. So when you talk about Odafe Oweh possibly having room to grow there, I think I'm with you, man. I think he's going to get better at that because really last year was his first year being asked to, try to get off the ball quickly, something that Mafe really does well.
Yeah, so that's where I'm looking at the complementary. And you're right about Oweh. He did have those responsibilities. And it's a transition, and I believe he will figure it out. Whereas Mafe, you just go. You look at Bowser. I think Bowser has some of that just go, and when he hits it, he's in the backfield. He's got that speed rush and that fastball. I like that fastball. I think that's going to be something that the team needs. And he's got all these like traits that we say like it's harder to find those traits. It's twitch and the twitch thing is always thrown out there, the twitch adjective, which I guess for me, I don't know what that means 100%, but I get it. I get what it means in the context of things. The thing, obviously, just looking at his profile, I have it in front of me, but not that good against the run. We're not as reliable against the run, so you're kind of trading off on the pass rush front. But we're going to get into some other players, but that's some of the things that you might find. And I feel like last year's class didn't have as many of these pure pass rushers as this group, where you're like, okay, legitimately, we can just turn these guys loose and they'll get to the quarterback. Whereas last year's class, I felt like some of them were a little bit more like projections or projects. But these guys, then he's another one that I think he's going to get to the quarterback. So I love
the Senior Bowl too, because you drop all the guys off at the same area at the same time. They get the playbook at the same time. It's all foreign to all of them, and they're learning on the fly. And there you are up against another good athlete that you're not familiar with, you haven't practiced against, so you don't necessarily know them. And it's more about pure ability. And Mafe really showed out. I love his. It's just like it's not just the twitch doesn't just show up in his speed, Dev. What I was trying to say is it's power too. Like he can run through you, run through half of your body. He gets a straight arm in there, speed to power, man. When he turns it on, and pretty much goes where he wants to go. Even though, like I said, I think my initial thoughts, you can find him. He's not a hard guy to find. You're going to be able to put hands on you. It's just where you're going to be able to put hands on him. You're just not going to be able to do much with him. So that's what I like about him. He gets there in a hurry. It's like a bullet. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, or a train, unstoppable to the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, 2 sacks in the Senior Bowl, right? I'm looking at the numbers right now. I mean, combined for, 11.5 sacks in 2 seasons. But beyond that, he's also he makes plays. So he's also did forced fumbles as well, and he gets tackles for loss. So that's the other part of this, that macro conversation is they need playmakers.
It's a playmaker, right?
They need a playmaker. So if you tell me that you have someone who also, again, the Ravens like they usually like to have the production. We saw them go away from that with OA last year, but again, I think that's why Mafe stands out to me, because I believe his game is nice and complementary to Owe's game. And then you have Dalen Hayes, who kind of has a little bit of both, because I feel like Hayes has those moves, but doesn't have the production necessarily from the pass rush perspective, but can play the run. He can drop into coverage. So you kind of have a nice group there if you go that route.
So, Dev, say the Ravens miss out again. They address other needs here in the first 2 rounds. What about the 3rd round? What kind of guys are you looking at? Who stands out on the big board there as you look at it? And also, if you think I have somebody ranked too high, too low, I would like to hear that kind of feedback too. Like everybody's board is going to be different. So, what are there any players do you like, say, at a 3rd round target in that mid 3rd round?
Yeah, you have Sam Williams, and then you have Zach Paschal listed with, like you said, they're 2nd round grades, but they're kind of then in that 3rd round range. And and again, we're still a month away. So these projections don't mean a whole lot in terms of, stuff you see through mock drafts. But Paschal seems to be, I think, a pretty safe 3rd round player. Williams, I've seen go all the way from top of the 2nd to around where you have him in this ranking. But I think both players. I'll start with Williams, who could be pound for pound. We talk about Mafe's explosiveness and like his ability as a pass rusher, but Sam Williams is right. I think as a pass rusher and that impact he could be a notch above Mafe, and just it's really a beauty is in the eye of the beholder type of thing. I've read at least one report where I think the scout from the AFC said, just don't even bother worrying about the run with this guy, because he's going to rush the passer. And that's what matters the most in this league. And I'm one of those guys. I think anybody that follows some of the stuff I've opined on as far as pass rush is concerned, I think you figure that part out later. The Ravens obviously the Ravens have a different philosophy on that. And will they concede on that, though? They've done it before with like Tim Williams. That's a guy that didn't play the run. And we know Tim Williams did not work out, but that's also because of personal, I think, issues with him. Like he didn't put the effort in.
A lot of whispers about that kind of stuff with Tim Williams.
So
I missed on him big time, Dev.
We all did.
I loved him.
Oh, I loved him too. And I think they got him. I think they got him in the 3rd round. Like if I'm not mistaken, we were like, that's a 1st round player. Same thing with Sam Williams. I think there's some, I know this is going to scare people, but there's some elements to Tim Williams, but I think with Sam Williams, you can't ever qualify if he's going to make an effort to want to be a good player. Right. But I know he had an off the field incident. I think he was charged.
The charges were dropped. It was a serious incident, but he was, I believe, arrested, and then the charges were dropped. But Sam Williams, the fans always tell them, I try not to talk about the off-field stuff, but
I don't want to harp on it either. But
they can Google that and find it. It was some serious stuff that might take Sam Williams off the board, but I'm just ranking him here like he's on our board. Yeah. And what I like about him is just his sheer power. And with Williams, you notice I have that D end label next to him. And that's because I saw a lot of him with his hand in the dirt. I think he has that kind of power where he could slide inside, and Sam Williams could be like what Ravens fans saw from McPhee or Zadarius Smith, an inside-out type player, can hold down the edge or give you that sub-rush inside. But, his run defense is concerning for you, though, Dev.
Little bit. I mean, to me, if that's the trade-off, I'm okay with that. And there was a comp that Lance Zierlein had, Jason, that I thought really was spot on. I think he comped him to Sean Phillips, the former Charger.
Oh, yeah.
That player. And Phillips's game was just what you described, because he was big enough. I mean, his body type I guess on the face of it, Sean Phillips' body type, right, is like 100% edge, 3-4 edge, right?
That's right.
260. It looked the part. He looked the part, but I remember what really was so tough with that guy was what you just said. He could line up on the line, and I think he did quite a bit of that. I can't remember how the Chargers, whether they were 34 or 43 at that time, but bottom line is he has the hands and the power, like you said, those hands, which is like a trademark for McPhee and Zadarius Smith and
Just a lot of power in that man. A lot of explosiveness in Sam Williams.
Side of the game, which is that he can actually like get past the edge, right? And he's athletic, and he has the ability to bend, and his hands usage is pretty good too. Like he's crafty. I saw some of what he's done. Again, these are just clips. I'm not talking about all 22. I never, by the way, profess that I have seen all 22 like some of the other draft analysts we have in the community, which including yourself, that watch the games, and I appreciate all the work you guys do, and I pay attention to that, and I think I form my own kind of opinions based on.
So, Dev, I got one for you, bro. I got one for you.
Yeah.
Sam Williams versus Charles Cross gave him a hard time, my friend.
Yeah, totally.
Gave Charles Cross a hard time. I mean,
Totally.
You can tell that this guy is NFL made. He's got one of them. I have all this experience. He walks on the field with the swagger, and Williams isn't going to back down. And that was the worst. I'd say worse. I mean, Cross looked great. You see where he is on my board, but that was the most I see in Cross struggle was against Sam Williams. Now, Pascal. I keep wanting to call him Zach Pascal because of the Colts
receiver. Not Pascal, right? It's Pascal.
But it's Pascal. But this is John Pascal. Yeah. So yes, it's still I'm getting old, Dev. Sometimes these names get confusing.
Oh no, I'm the king of mispronouncing names, so don't worry about it.
Awesome. So Mr. Pascal, though, you saw him line up everywhere at Kentucky. That was one thing when I watched him that I noticed is I couldn't even get in the groove of where he was. I kept having to freeze it and find him because he'd be on the right side, he'd be on the left side, he'd be inside, he'd be outside. Yeah. He'd be off the line of scrimmage sometimes. Like, it was really, really odd. And then the other thing that made him a tough evaluation for me, and somebody I'm going to go back and watch again, is they wore him out at Kentucky, Dev. I mean, this guy, like, a lot of times I have to look and see, okay, he's on the field, now he's off the field, especially these big guys up front. And Paschal was on the field all the time, seemingly, for Kentucky. So it was kind of hard for me. Like, I knocked him on his overall athletic ability, that twitch that we were talking about earlier. Yeah. I don't see it. What I see from Paschal is more of a grinder, good eyes, good in the run game, somebody you can move around and be a good rotational piece with maybe not a limited, maybe has a limited upside, but Paschal, I believe, will be a good pro because he's just a good football player. Maybe he's just not as explosive as some of these other athletes. What do you think about my take? Where do you agree, disagree? Give me what you got on Paschal, man. The burgers are burning, by the way. Burgers are burning, man. We got to take care of them.
Oh, that's not a good thing. That means we're we got to bring some attention to that. No, I agree with quite a bit of what you said. Actually, I mean the versatility is what stood out. Can play multiple positions. He can even line up. I think he saw some DT reps. Like what was it? Some 3-tech and like some whatever in their scheme.
All over the place. All over the place, Dev.
He is, and I guess if you want to say one way to look at it is the Trayvon Walker game, right? That's what I see in him as well. Like big guy, big. I think he's like 275 or something like that. He can line up inside though, and you can line him up outside, and you can line him up. Potentially, you could have him stand up. So they were going. I mean, they've had Zadarius Smith here, and that's probably the best. Maybe McPhee, I think, is a little bit more hand in the dirt traditionally because he went from defensive tackle to edge. So if you want to get all the way down to that point, that's another person to think of. And I think Zadarius is probably a little bit further removed from that because he didn't put his hand in the dirt like all the time, right? But they used him that way on third down. So Paschal has that game, and that's attractive. what is interesting though is he tested really well as far as the explosion. I think he had a really good combine that stood out, metrics and testing results. That stuff, you take it a little bit with a grain of salt in the sense that I think all these guys tested well. It was like a free for all at the combine, but that's positive to me because if he's got the testing and he can, I agree in the sense like he's not Williams in terms of the traits you look for in his pure edge capability and his pure, I would say like as just physically gifted athletic guy. He's not that necessarily, but because of all the things he brings to the table elsewhere, maybe he's worth, maybe it's there. Maybe it's like Owe, right? Like maybe it's all there athletically and they just didn't give him a chance to showcase it because he had other responsibilities on the field.
Right. That was one of my theories, is that they're moving him around and plugging all kinds of holes. And then the other theory I had when I saw him test well at the combine, I kept thinking, and I had that thought when I was watching him, they are wearing him out. Like if he comes to the Ravens, you know how the Ravens rotate their edge defenders, play at 50%. You can't have a guy going from edge to defensive tackle to the other edge to taking on two double teams in the middle, sub-rushing on third downs, and expect him to be fresh the entire game. So I'm wondering how much of it, like when I saw him test well, I'm wondering how much of it was just in-game fatigue for him. And you have to credit him, though, Dev. I think the fact that he was asked to do all that at Kentucky, good defense, good team, really shows you what they thought of him and how much they relied on him, and that he could adapt quickly to the NFL level mentally, be prepared to focus in on a role or two and really nail that down for you as a rookie.
That's a good point too. And that is important. That's an important point because that's where what the player's makeup is to make them successful comes into play. We just talked about Williams. We talked about Tim Williams. And I believe if you get to this point in the draft, let's just say for argument's sake that they take in the first round Wyatt or Davis, right? And then they come back in round 2 and there's an offensive lineman that's just too good for them to pass up, whether it's Linderbaum, whether that's Parham, or I don't know, whoever, right? Like they could get a tackle there. And now all of a sudden you're and I know Ravens fans will be like pushing the panic button when we get into the draft and you know how it goes. And they'll be like, oh my God, like it's day 2 has gone by. Well, actually, I'll take it back. I'm going to day 3. All right. In between the break of the second round, because
we're going to miss out on something. We're going to miss out on
something. Like, so they have 2 third-round picks, though, right? And I believe that you would score. It's like you said up top. I think you articulated it so well. Don't think of Paschal as a third-round player. He's not a third-round player. He's a second-round top. He could even be top of the second round. It's just a flavors thing where does a team prefer the flash that maybe, Sam Williams has and the upside versus, like you said, Paschal is, what you're going to get. He's going to be a grinder. He's going to do a lot of the things the Ravens look for in those players. But bottom line is I agree in that his makeup, his maturity, how he handled it, that stuff stands out to the Ravens. I can guarantee you. Because that's the stuff they look out for, because they want to make sure that they have somebody in the building that they can rely on.
And it's tough, Dev, because, we don't get to interview these guys. The interview process is such an important process. You hear me harp on this all the time, man. Like the difference in talent is minimal and they all do different things. We really want somebody who's focused on making themselves the best football player they can, who works at it and who just, loves the game. Doesn't mean they can't have other interests. So I'm not going on back to the Thibodeau thing.
Right.
I'm just talking about when the whistle blows, when it's time to prepare, when it's time to practice, they are there and they're accountable. We don't get to know all this, Dev. And I mean, really, I think some NFL teams struggle. NFL teams struggle to figure this out too. But we go by the context clues. And to me, if they're counting on him in all these different spots, they don't want to take him off the field. He's their best edge rusher on the early downs. He's their best rusher on third down. He's their best run stopper. They put him on the strong side here. I mean, to me, that just means the actions speak louder than words, I guess is what I'm saying. They depended on Paschal big time.
I love that context when you peel back the onion, because it's such a good point. At that rate, he is so valuable to them that they cannot take this guy off the field. They had Calais Campbell for the Ravens, right?
Right. We
Like,
wanted to rest him. We couldn't.
They could not, because they knew without unequivocally, did they trust Broderick Washington in those snaps, or whoever's going to be? No, like, you want Campbell on the field. So that's a great point. I like a lot of what he brings to the table. And again, you would do really well if he's your third round pick, because I think he has every ability. If things go south with Bowser's recovery, not south, but maybe like there's a delay with Bowser's slow. I don't think, by the way, and this is another conversation for another day, a lot of the talk is this guy, whoever you draft, is going to come in and start ahead of other players. That doesn't automatically happen necessarily. And I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think Dalen Hayes is the next man up. If not, Jalen Ferguson's kind of like is a senior guy, but I don't know if I'm crazy about that. So I think it's Hayes if he's recovered, and I think that's not a bad thing, because I think Hayes has got a lot of ability. He could even be a fringe starting edge player in this league. It's just that I don't know that he's going to be like, an elite guy. I think,
and he's just a total question mark too, after playing like 5 snaps all last year.
Snaps wise, he was hurt, right? So either way, but where I'm getting to is Paschal is someone who they could draft in the 3rd round, and again, if the draft plays out the way we talk about, I don't think it's the end of the world if they have him. Because I do think, like you said, they know, okay, this is a guy we can plug in and feel good about. He can play different positions. He's going to get some snaps, and he could even force his way into the lineup. So that puts more pressure on Owe, I think. But I think Owe is in that point in his progression where he will take it up a notch, and I trust that based on him as an individual and the fact that he's super motivated to be a great player.
Yeah, so and the fact that there's going to be playing time for everybody, man, especially after last year.
Yeah.
Better stack this team.
Yeah, I mean, you could go with if you get Kayvon Thibodeau in round 1, then you're set, right? But the fact of the matter is that between D-line and edge, they're going to have to basically there's going to be a little bit of a compromise is the word I was looking for. And you're going to have to compromise a little bit with one of those areas. So if it comes down to it, this edge class, rounds 2, rounds 3, it's a really, really strong group.
Well, Dev, I really appreciate you. And I think at the beginning, if I'm wrong, you didn't tell people where they can find you and all that other stuff. I think we skipped right over it, man. So tell people about your work. Your links will be in the description, so they'll be able to find you if they scroll down there. But tell us what you've been working on, man.
I've been a little. I like to make the joke that I'm the Ozzie Newsome of Russell. Well, let me take a step back. I'm talking about Ozzie Newsome of Russell Street Report right now as an advisor. I'm behind the scenes a little bit. I don't want to blow my. I don't want to be like. Oh,
it's
man,
Hall of Fame comparison.
Ozzie. I'm not, but I meant like more like right now, Ozzie. So I jump in here and there and drafts, free agency. My schedule's lended to being able to be a little bit more busy. So folks can find me at Dev Panchwagh on Twitter. That's the best place. And I have some articles that I've written in the past month. One, actually, good timing. I feel like if people want to understand why this draft is so important for the Ravens franchise, I wrote a piece really diving into Eric DaCosta's tenure as a GM, and I think I have some strong opinions about that. I think, yes, he needs to hit this draft out of the park, but I get into some details on why I don't think some of the criticism of the past drafts is necessarily fair all the way, but I get into it on both sides of that conversation. So I feel like as a primer, people are just kind of like, I want to understand where they're at, why these drafts haven't been performing well to this point. Check that out. I also put together a piece, I think it was 2 weeks ago, on just the unrestricted / outside free agent signings the Ravens have made. Graded those moves, specifically Marcus Williams, Morgan Moses, Michael Pierce. I broke down each player individually, gave them a grade. So I did that most recently. And then, other than that, we got the Ravens Draft Central podcast with James Ogden. We had an episode drop, I think it was the week before, which focused on this exact group that we're talking about, the edge group. But it was a little bit more of D-line edge, but not as much on the focus of the second-round players. So plenty of content there. And that's on Spotify. That's on Apple Music. So Apple Podcasts, I should say. So yeah, there's my plug.
Dude, it's a nice plug. And by the way, yeah, busy man over there, Mr. Panchwagh. But he made time for Huddle It Up Films, made time for me. And I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. Notice I reached out to you first. I know you're a traveling man. Man.
I'm like, make it sound like I'm Dustin Hoffman in Death of a Salesman. Right?
You're an interesting man, bro. You're an interesting man. But I will say, don't make the Ozzie Newsome. You're not Ozzie Newsome, bro, on any level. You might be an advisor over there, working to an advisory role.
I don't know how. Yeah,
you don't put yourself in the same breath as a Hall of Famer, man, and maybe a 2-time Hall of Famer.
Oh, I 100%. That's why I checked myself before I went.
You did.
But that's a joke. Our also Street Crew is really strong too. So check them out, and we have the Ravens Draft Central website as well. So that's been a good resource for building that up. Podcasts, articles, all that good stuff. But yeah. You are a wealth of knowledge yourself, and I learn a lot from you and the content you do on this channel and the game. And I think you have a really good perspective, especially with wide receiver and defensive back. So I always respect those opinions. It's funny because I remember you just recently put out something about when I really want a stud corner, and I know you're always about that stud corner. And I'm like, I've been so staunch. I'm like, they just gotta get a pass rusher, man. They gotta get But I level off a little bit because I love the Marcus Williams signing. So I'm like, well, maybe there's something to getting Derek Stingley, and just figure it out. Like you could get Dale. Like I said, we can give some reps to Dalen Hayes.
I like McDuffie. I like McDuffie a lot too, man.
Yeah,
McDuffie's an inside out player, Dev. We could put him in the slot. And he would fit right into the slot in between Marcus and Marlon. He can play outside corner too. It's not that he can't. He's one of those guys that could play either. So he would fit. Somebody got hurt, you can put him outside. He can cover all kinds of. Man, I have a McDuffie kind of crush on McDuffie. So yeah, that's one of my guys.
Board, but I'll leave that to the subsequent conversations.
Oh, I'm sure somebody will challenge me on it because I'm a little high on McDuffie right there, But Dev, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet up with me and talk about this edge group and get me started here, man. Hopefully the shows will get better and better as the series will go on. And I'll look back at this Dev show and be like, man, me and Dev, man, that was the worst one, man. The one we started with.
I'm hopeful for that. You know how I roll.
Yeah.
All the content should get better. But
unselfish.
It's fun, man. It's a lot of fun. If anything, we just have great. It's the thing about the draft. Like, it is just have fun with it. I would encourage the fan base just to have fun with it, right? I know you're going to get worked up about a Brandon Stevens type pick like we saw last year, and I did too.
Me too.
Admittedly, I did not, for the life of me, understand that pick. And then all of a sudden, you peel back the onion, as we say, and you see it. The guy got such a high football IQ. Like you said with Paschal, they had him playing everywhere. They didn't take him off the field. They were so hell-bent on keeping him in the mix that they were finding places to play him. So just think of it that way. Keep an open mind. They're not a perfect organization. We know that, but at the same token, they do a good job of, I feel like, trying to game the system and find, different angles to build the roster. So that's what I'm hoping. We have some great open conversations about players that believe, you might feel strongly about, but you could see possibilities for if you don't necessarily agree that should be the player they take.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and then it takes time to figure out if you were right or wrong. Sometimes they have a bad first year or a great first year and regress, like Michael Lohr situation, that kind of thing.
100%.
So yeah, man.
It's a ride, man. It's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. So just stick with it. and I'm leave on this one. I know we're up against it, but a couple great draft stories. Like one is I was watching a documentary on Junior Seau, which is tragic story, but that his college progression I did not know about, right? So in his first year, he didn't even play. He played special teams. Junior year, destroyed the entire country in terms of his impact. And then second guy is Tony Gonzalez, who a lot of people don't know about. I'd encourage you to watch his story, but his first year or two, I believe it's definitely his first year, he had a ton of drops coming out of for Kansas City. I mean, I think it was like the 14th pick or something. And this stuff happens. You have blue chip players that don't always perform, or they're kind of tucked under the surface and then they just turn into, great players. So just
that's
keep
right.
an open mind.
I remember Chuck Clark not being on my board. Looked at him, didn't think twice. I'm like, yeah, he's all right. He's strong safety.
Me too.
Whatever, and then you just see him work and grow into the player he does. That's why there's
rotation player. That's all I thought about when they took him. I'm like, okay, well, I thought Elliott was going to be the better player, and not that he's not, but here we are, right? So you just don't know.
All right, Dev. Well, I appreciate you so much, man. And if you do have time, you have my number, you have my DMs. Follow Dev on Twitter. He's always got good thoughts on there. Go check out his work. Man works his butt off, and his partner James. Trying to get James on. I think I don't want to ruin it, but I think I might be able to get some time with James. He likes to talk, Dev. I noticed that.
Yeah, well, he has a lot more value to bring in terms of what he says than I do.
He does, doesn't he? Well, not to you, but he has as much value as anybody, man. That's my guy right there.
No, he's great. He's good peoples, and definitely someone who also works extremely hard. I can't. He works. I kidded that he's working the same hours as Jeremiah and all these other dudes that are like doing this, getting paid for it and are out and on TV for it. So
I had to take a month. I had to take a month off of putting out content to get caught up on everything.
Oh, it's a lot of work. It's a beast. And James is someone who is old school, and he watches like you. Right? He watches the team. He watches the players, and he's very passionate. Like I'm different in the sense that I'll be like comfortable with leaning on the experts, right? Whoever those are. So I do that quite a bit. But you guys put the real work in. So applause to you guys. And it's going to be good if you can get him on. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Look forward to that one.
But hey, Dev, I really appreciate you. I really, really appreciate you, man. And thank you for starting off this series. And hopefully we can work building something good on this coming up to the draft to just get a feel for it, man.
Absolutely. Have fun. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Dev. Thanks so much, to my football family. Just wanted to say thank you. All right, Dev. Say goodbye to people now.
Take care, everyone.